Hello all YouTubers, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for tuning back into this Invest 98L discussion for July 8th, 2020. Before I get on with today's video, however, I would ask that every single one of you please smash that subscribe button and ring the bell notifications. Thank you guys so much for 600 subscribers. Let's get to our next goal of 700 subscribers and to our next long-term goal of the big 1,000. So please smash that subscribe button and ring the bell notifications, as well as watching the whole video. Both of these things really do support my channel, and watching the whole video, it's a win-win. You get the best part of the content, and I get the watch time, which I really do need for my channel. And please also like and share this video. Thank you. Now let's get on with today's video. So today we're going to be talking about Invest 98L and how it could be a pretty serious threat to the East Coast. Alright, it's not often here in the East Coast that we see a tropical cyclone move right up the East Coast like this, especially since where it's forming, and it's not too common. If you saw on the Weather Channel, it's not too common to see a tropical cyclone or an invest spawn in this location and move up the East Coast like this. So this is a little bit of a rare setup, but it's not like we haven't totally seen it before. It does have a 70% chance of developing within the next 2 days. If this does form, this would form Thursday or Friday. It is a broad area of low pressure. It's an invest near the coast of northeastern South Carolina. A large area of disorganized showers and storms. It will move over the waters adjacent to North Carolina, and the low will move northward up the mid-Atlantic coast through Friday. And environmental conditions during that time will be conducive for development, expected to be conducive for development, and a tropical or even subtropical cyclone is likely to form within the next day or so. But regardless of development, heavy rain, gusty winds are definitely some threats here, even if this doesn't form. And as you can see, here's the storm system right now moving right up the East Coast here. So I'm talking about South Carolina up through Maine. I'm talking about all you guys. I mean, I'll name all the states if you want me to. South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. All states that you can watch out for impacts. I would even watch out in Tennessee and West Virginia too. Even though the storm is starting to pull away, we know in those mountainous locations it doesn't take much rain to cause some flooding because of the slopes. Alright, so here's where the low is sitting currently. It's sitting right about here. And you can see during its whole entire journey here, above average waters the whole way. Alright, it is sitting, the invest is, again, currently sitting right here. It'll be moving up the East Coast in a fashion like this. So as you can see, because of that Gulf Stream and because the waters off the East Coast happen to be above average, this is gonna really help the storm system develop. Take a look at the sea surface temperatures. 28, 29 degrees Celsius here. I mean, that's very, very warm. I mean, especially for the East Coast. Now, once it moves up the East Coast towards the Delmarva, still it's going to be in the 70s. That's not completely horrible, though. If it sticks closer to the coast, maybe it goes towards the Chesapeake Bay, maybe it's a little warmer on the waters of the Chesapeake Bay. But the chances that the center of a storm would go right over the Chesapeake Bay, I mean, that would have to be a very, very small storm. So that's not necessarily going to happen. But we'll be moving up the East Coast and have some warm waters as it does so. Now, taking a look at the satellite loop here, all right, I've been sitting here because sometimes when you let it sit here like this, it usually loads it fully, but the satellite must be having a little issue. Oh, there we go. It looks fixed. So there's your low. It's sitting there spinning. It's not completely organized. You got our disorganized shower and storm activity. All right. I mean, there is a broader area of rotation as well. I'd say maybe a little rotation inside that. Maybe like a little surface low developing inside, or a surface low developing, and there's another upper level low providing some spin too. But you can see some showers and storms are popping here and there. We do have some convective activity starting to fire over North Carolina, but the main activity from the tropical system is currently off the coast. And this is going to bring some pretty heavy rainfall to the mid-Atlantic and northeast over the coming days. So again, your current low position is right on the border of South Carolina, North Carolina, off the coast there. That is your current low position. Now, in terms of the tracking, the Invest 98L tracking guidance brings this system really close to the East Coast here. Potentially North Carolina landfall. All right, maybe moving just off the coast of North Carolina and then moving over to Delmarva. Maybe a Maryland, Delaware, Jersey landfall. Maybe even another landfall in Connecticut or Rhode Island or even Massachusetts. All right, just going to hug the East Coast a lot. And while hugging land does hit development a little bit, it's still going to be just off the coast, so it still will allow it to form. But if it does happen to move over land the whole time, that would obviously decrease its chances of development dramatically and just be like a regular old low pressure. But it will definitely be strengthening. Some models, as I'll be showing you, predict 1,006 millibars, which, as you know, that the lower the millibar number, the stronger the winds. Some models predict 999, 1,000 millibars, so even stronger winds. So this moves over the coast, moves up the east coast, and back into the northeast. A lot of models are agreeing on this, which is a good thing, because when models agree, that is definitely a good sign. At least what we know what's going on. When you look at the GPS tracking guides, you can see the same thing. A lot of the models hugging the east coast all the way up through Maine, and what happens after that, obviously the models disagree, which is acceptable because that's what models do sometimes. But you can see definitely a strengthening low pressure system. All right, even if it doesn't develop, this could be a coastal low, but it does have a very high chance of developing as of now. And when you look at the intensity guidance, you can see that a lot of the models do take it to just barely a tropical storm at some point. So it is going to happen within the next 48 hours. If it does happen, it will happen again within the next 48 hours, most likely Thursday or Friday here. All right, now let's look at some more tracking guidance, some early cycle tracking guidance. And as you can see, again, saying the same thing here. But a lot of models do keep it right on the Jersey shoreline there, which is pretty interesting. You see a very high concentration of models does keep it right near Jersey. So that would be really bad for places like, Virginia and Maryland, Delaware, and Jersey, because even though the storm system is hugging the coast, it's sitting just off the coast. So we're still going to have time to develop. And if it sits near that Chesapeake Bay where it's really warm, that will help it develop as well. But obviously, like I said, the chances of the actual low center moving right over the Chesapeake Bay without touching land, that's a very low chance of that happening. But still, again, it's going to get a lot of energy fed into this thing. And when we look at the shear, as you can see, shear is pretty low right now, and it pretty much will remain low up until about 96 hours out or so when it becomes extratropical. Then the wind shear starts going up because it's moving through the northeast now. Ocean water temperatures, once it starts moving over the coast, right there, 28 degrees Celsius, which is definitely low to mid 80s, which is plenty for development. Even 27 is also plenty for development. That's about 80 degrees. Storm speed, it's not moving that fast either. All right, it's not like it's going to be stalled out. It's not going to be racing off like Edward was. But it's moving at a good, I'd say about, 9, 10, 11 miles an hour, which isn't, then it'll actually slow down once it starts developing more. It'll actually slow down a little bit to about 6 to 8 knots, which is about more like 8 to 9 miles an hour. And then once it starts weakening, usually what happens when these storms weaken, they'll actually start speeding up again. So it'll go to more about 20 miles an hour. Heat content, again, we're right in that time period here, 12, 18 hours out. So that's saying about like Thursday morning or so. During the day Thursday, we could have that's when we can see our highest, air quotes, highest level of heat content. It's not that high, but because we're farther north in latitudes, but we still do have some decently warm ocean water, and that definitely will help development. Now, let's get into the good part. Let's get into some good old-fashioned modeling here. Here's GFS. Here's a GFS model, and as you can see, right here, we're getting into 8 p.m. on Thursday here, and you can see the low sitting off the coast now of North Carolina, right off the coast there. All right, and the GFS model actually says that this could be directly impacting places like the Chesapeake and Delaware and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, like directing impactly. Like we're talking about like a Chesapeake Delaware landfall here. All right, and the GFS model specifically says that it'll be moving right over Jersey, but the heaviest rain is sitting right over North Delaware and Southeast Pennsylvania. And keep in mind, we also have a low over here with a weak little jet stream that you'll see later, which is almost like how Sandy, that's how Sandy got drawn into the coast. This isn't taking the same track as Sandy, but that jet there could help to drag the low closer to the coast, which is, there's not really a high pressure to drag this thing out to sea. All right. So there you go. Then the low makes another landfall even in New York City. Comes right in that certain angle, right into New York City. Then it moves to the northeast, bringing some decently heavy rainfall. And by the way, GFS gives it about 1,004 millibars of pressure at its strongest. Now, how about total precipitation? What are we thinking about that precipitation here? Pretty heavy. The little trail of where this is going to move. So about the Chesapeake, literally all the state of Delaware, eastern Pennsylvania, western Jersey, and even up through the Catskills, eastern New York. There, we're talking about southwestern Vermont, western Mass, Connecticut. That little bullseye there, wherever you see this little stripe of purple. All right, that's about 2 to 4 inches of rain, that little stripe there. So that's our bullseye, and that's what the GFS is indicating, our area of heaviest rainfall right there, from the Chesapeake all the way up through eastern New York and Vermont. Now, how about the wind speeds? Because we know the wind speeds definitely matter here, even though Wind won't be our biggest issue. You could still see, all right, winds that could be plenty strong. All right, they aren't. GFS actually isn't forecasting a tropical storm, not quite, but almost. They're calling for about 32 knots of wind, which if you know or may not know, tropical storm you need 34 knots. So they're predicting about, I'd say about 35 mph winds, which is still probably a tropical or subtropical depression according to the GFS model. But a very big low pressure system's got a pretty decent sized wind field. It's not a huge storm system, but it will be moving through the northeast as we head over time there. Let's take a look at the cyclonic vorticity signature now. And I like to show this a lot because it definitely does show like the energy in the storm system. And you can see that when it moves off the coast, there's that little bullseye of dark red. But even outside of that, way outside of that actually, we still have an area of convective energy. And just give it time here. Friday morning is moving right over the Chesapeake and the Delmarva right here. And you can see we also, again, have that little low with the little jet stream right here. We got a little area of spin over there. That's going to help to drag this thing closer to the coast. Then a little area of energy might even combine with that other low pressure, but it might just pass by. I don't think they'll quite connect. But, again, it's going to be, according to the GFS, it'll move right up through the Delmarva and then kind of take a little bit of a right turn through the northeast. Now, how about those 250 millibar winds? Because we know that wind shear and that jet stream currents, they do matter. All right, and deciding is there too much wind shear to develop the storm? I'd say no, really. And there's not really too much strong wind tearing this apart. There is a little weak jet stream, which is enough to carry the storm, but it's not enough to weaken it, which is good for the storm system. It'll be moving right along that gentle current, very calm, kind of like a breeze. Even though that breeze is about 40, 50 knots, which is, but keep in mind this is also like thousands and thousands of feet in the atmosphere. So for being that high, 40, 50 knots of wind is pretty calm. All right, indicated by the later colors on the map. Then as the low moves up through the northeast, and then the jet stream comes, it drags the storm system through the northeast, and eventually it will. And with the incoming jet stream, it'll actually help. That's what's going to make that right turn at the end through the northeast, because that jet stream will come through at the timing that it's supposed to. All right, coming in just the right time to kind of take the low pressure and drag it off towards the east, towards the right here. Now let's take a look at the GEM model. Now, since this storm system is actually close to the United States, somewhat close, I can actually use the European model this time. Some of you might be wondering why I haven't been using the European model. I have been using it in my predictions and interpreting into my data here, but because if a tropical system is too far from the U.S., the European, at least the way I'm using it, won't be actually going out that far. But since the storm system is close to the U.S., I will be using a European model now as well. So here's the GEM model, and you can see the low moves up the East Coast. Still, there it is. Except they have a lot of the heaviest rain on the east side, and this looks more like a subtropical cyclone. You got definitely like a more broader system. It definitely looks more subtropical. The rain's slightly displaced from where the storm center is. Still producing some rain nonetheless on the East Coast. And another low pressure system might even bring some rain to the East Coast as well. So maybe like a 1-2 punch. The tropical system comes and that upper level low comes. So that'll be interesting to watch too. Rainfall with the GEM model. Let's go out to 120 hours like we did with the GFS. As you can see, a lot of the rain with the GEM model is kept well offshore actually, with the exception for Cape Hatteras and then eventually like Cape Cod up through Boston, Portland, Maine, Bangor, Maine. That's like your little target area there. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. So then the GFS had the same thing, except they had a little bit further west, more like the Delmarva and parts of the interior northeast. So two models, two different points of view. Nothing wrong with that. However, though, if you look at the GEM model, actually, if you look at early on, they do develop it a little bit more. I'd say getting a little bit closer to 34 knots right here early on, and it starts to maintain some of its strength. It doesn't really weaken too much. Then it moves to the northeast and not really gaining all too much strength, getting to about 33 knots, 32 knots as opposed to 28 or 30 with the GFS model. So a tad bit stronger with the GEM model, but then it'll start weakening a little bit as it heads to the northeast. If you look at the cyclonic vorticity signature, you can also see how it looks a little dysfunctional. We have a little band here of heavier convective activity, heavier cyclonic vorticity. But you can see that it just doesn't look quite as organized. It looks a little bit more subtropical, I'd say, than tropical, than like what the GFS was calling it, like tropical, and GEM model was kind of calling it subtropical. Kind of like half and half here. Let's look at those jet stream winds here, and you can see that not as much really jet stream wind to really carry this thing. There's a slight kick here, enough just to carry right up the East Coast, and then eventually there's that other jet stream that'll really give it another kick that'll also help it to move to the East Coast. So there's a lot of different factors that go into the tracking of this and the strength. All right, and I do think that everything is setting up fine, that we can get a nice accurate prediction on it. And when we look at the European model now, as obviously we switch websites, this is the European model, and they definitely do make it pretty strong too. But notice how it gets off the coast of North Carolina by about 2 a.m. Friday, 8 a.m. Friday, 2 p.m. Friday, even 8 p.m. Friday. All right, look, we're 2 a.m. Saturday, and finally 8 a.m. Saturday and into the afternoon on Saturday, it's finally starting to leave the mid-Atlantic. So European has it stalling a little bit. Watch, for example, like the Delmarva here, it starts impacting you guys at about Friday morning, but it may not even leave until Saturday morning. This might last a whole 24, 36 hours, depending on exactly where you live. So I'm not saying, again, this isn't a Hurricane Harvey or Tropical Storm Allison kind of event, all right? But it still will be, it's not going to be the fastest moving storm either. It'll still be sticking around for a decent amount of time. But you see a low is sitting right off the coast here. There's your heaviest rain, Maryland and Delaware right there, your heaviest area of rainfall, according to the European model, 2 p.m. Friday. And then look at this, the low sits right, it just sits right on the bay, right between Wildwood and Lewis, or Rehoboth Beach. The low is sitting right there, making a Jersey and or Delaware landfall. And then moves back over the coast, and then potentially, like the GFS model was kind of saying, making a landfall near New York City or Long Island. But with 1,000 millibars of pressure, like I was telling you, 999,000 millibars is a decently strong tropical or subtropical cyclone. Let's take a look at those sustained winds here. All right, sustained winds, it's not all that powerful, but you can see that the winds are still going to be packing a punch here. I think at their strongest point, maybe we could see 30, 32 knots, close to tropical storm status. It's going to be close. None of the major models are really hinting at an obvious tropical storm, maybe a tropical depression, but nonetheless, pretty much, think about it, a 35 mile-per-hour winds tropical depression versus 40 mile-per-hour winds tropical storm. There's really not much difference except the winds a tad bit stronger. The rainfall is going to be the same. The surge is pretty much going to be the same. Surge is another issue, too. We could be seeing a foot of rise plus above water in some spots. So that surge will pretty much remain the same. The only thing that's going to change is a little bit stronger winds. All right, so not much difference between a strong depression and a weak storm. Now, looking at the cyclonic vorticity signature here, look at this. The European definitely does put a lot of oomph on the storm system, if you know what I'm talking about. All right, moving up the East Coast here, and so again, a nice little area of intense cyclonic energy sitting right on the East Coast of Delaware as well. What am I saying? Delaware only has an East Coast. East Coast of Delaware, and right over Wildwood and Cape May, that area, strongest area of convective activity. And then eventually it does move into New York and up to the northeast there. So that is definitely very interesting to watch. Looking at those jet stream winds here, you can see that, I mean, we're heading into Saturday morning now, Saturday afternoon, not much. After the storm starts leaving to the northeast, we could have a little very weak jet that could help carry it through the northeast. But the storm system's like, all right, jet stream, I know where to go. You don't got to push me like that. So I think I know where to go now. So that's kind of what it's talking to how it's talking to the jet stream, if the storms could talk. Looking at the 5-day precip outlook, our highest point here, like I said, right where that strongest area of convective activity was, right where Wildwood is, and right over the bay up through central Delaware, we could be talking about 5, 6, 7 inches possibly, right in that little area there. But even outside of that, our target area, the Chesapeake Bay, Maryland coast, Delaware coast, New Jersey, up through New York City, and up through the New York and Vermont border, potentially target area of 2 to 4 inches plus of rainfall. This could be a potentially dangerous storm system. And just to kind of wrap it up here, our ensemble-based probabilities, you can see, at least according to the NCEP and the Euro and the GEM and the FNMOC, we got a 100% chance of development right in here. All right, right off the coast of North Carolina, 100% chance of development. If you look at the NCEP ensemble-based, they call for more of an 80 to 90% chance of development, and there's your tracking right up the East Coast once again, like I showed you earlier. Here's a sort of a similar image here, but you can see that area of 100% chance of development is much larger now. So definitely our pink bubble means 100% chance of development. They're saying that this will develop. And finally, another NC on another different kind of ensemble here up the East Coast. Again, 80 to 90% chance of development, which is not too shabby. It's still a very high chance of development. So we're going to have to watch this. Definitely want to make sure that you stay safe. Treat this like a hurricane. All right, take the necessary hurricane precautions. I mean, I wouldn't say fully standby, but definitely get those sandbags ready because you never know when you might need them. I'd prepare now. Get those sandbags out now, especially if you live on the coast. You can still see a foot of storm surge above dry ground. Thank you for watching today's video, guys. Stay safe. I ain't the weather dude. Signing off. Till next time. Catch you guys next video.